Good morning, Bucknutters. It's Thursday, January 26, 2017. I'm Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. Usually on Thursdays, we hear the dulcet tones of 24/7 Sports Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. Had a little change this week. He took the Tuesday slot. That means today's Thursday. We have the one and only Duane Long in today. Duane, playing hurt with a cold. We appreciate you being here, brother.
Oh, I'm just glad we got to it. Usually at the tail end of a cold, I'll start to lose my voice. So, we're lucky.
We are very lucky that Duane is able to play today. And we want to thank L Boogie for starting a thread on questions for Duane for this show. I think we're going to start doing this each week now in the off season. Provides some interesting questions and does a lot of my work for me, which is also good. So we're going to take it from the top here, Duane. The first question, courtesy of L Boogie. And it's something you and I have talked about, I want to say ad nauseum. The one thing Ohio State has not done in recruiting since Urban got here is land the superhero plugger up front, your Marvin Wilsons, your Rashard Lawrence, who went to LSU. There's a question here about a guy like Dalen Wade, who's committed to Stanford, and IMG's Teron Vincent, who, if anyone listens to the Bucknuts 90, is my guy, coming up class. What is your vibe on the reason Ohio State is missing out on the plugger defensive tackles?
It's just not that complicated. Fans just cannot. I've been telling them this for years. There's an old saying, all politics is local. Well, so is recruiting. Kids stay in state, period. Kids overwhelmingly stay in region. That's what happens. And when all these kids, it's real easy to check on. Just go down, call up top defensive tackles in the class and see where they're from. They're from the South. Overwhelmingly, these kids are from the South. And they stay in region. More often than not, they stay in state. That's what it comes down to. I mean, last year, Rashawn Gary was the one elite defensive tackle we've seen outside the region. We didn't get him. Well, that happens. We just don't see these big athletic guys in this part of the country like we do in the South, and the kids stay in the South. Yeah, Urban Meyer does a better job than anybody in the country going in and poaching kids out of other parts of the country, bringing them to Ohio State. But there's also this tradition. Look at go to the NFL. Look to see the greats that have played the game. From Deacon Jones to Kevin Green you can go down a list of the top defensive ends, defensive tackles ever in the history of the game. They've come out of the South, and they've stayed in the South to play their college ball. It's just, the numbers are actually overwhelming. Maybe I'll do something on that, on the message board, just to show you where these guys come from and where they go to school. And the tradition, elite tackles and ends coming out of the Southeast Conference, it's just unbelievable. And that's what fans need to accept. These guys have no reason to leave their region. They get to stay close to home. Mom and dad have an easier time with them to see them play. Those are the schools they grew up with. Those are the schools they grew up loving. And they can stay home, and they've got the NFL tradition. So many kids, when kids leave the region, Dan, it is so much about getting to the NFL. They see a school that is producing talent. Look at what's going on with Ohio State and defensive backs right now. getting defensive backs from all over the country. Yeah, well, they're going to the NFL and they're going early. That has everything to do with it.
Another reason for this is the guys we're talking about, just physically, are the biggest dudes around. Those guys are easier to identify earlier on, and these guys have been recruited, some of them since they were in the 8th grade. So this is not some late-blooming corner who grows into his body. Most of the guys we're talking about are the ones who grow early, and everybody in the town knows about them when they're about 10 years old. So you're not just battling the regional bias, you're battling the time that the guys have been recruited. And anyone concerned about our ability to recruit outside the area, just look at this class. So take it from there. So let's move on to our next question. Someone who is one of your, obviously your longtime fans here, WP Buckeye. Duane, back in the day when you published your rankings, so people who don't know this, Duane actually used to do his own rankings for the state way back in the day. That's actually how you and Mr. Bucknuts hooked up. So I'm going to go too far down memory lane here. But Duane, back in the day when you published your rankings, he doesn't recall you stacking prospects in terms of NFL draft round predictions. Obviously, this is a tangential look at the idea that 24/7 Sports has 32 5-stars based on the fact there are 32 NFL teams, and they're trying to project guys by round. So back to WP Buckeye's question. Duane, I'm thinking that you addressed your collegiate career more. What were your ranking thresholds? Meaning, how did you rate guys when you were projecting them for college?
Well, there was an NFL element to it. Always has been. Those guys that are just so elite, the term is can't miss. Those were the elite guys, and you did project them as NFL players, and they were going to be at the top of your list. That's just the way it is. Now, your next level guys are the guys that you know are going to be really good college football players. Yeah, that element, I don't know about all those numbers and all that. I never really looked at it like that, no. I don't actually get that, to be honest.
And Duane developed a quite defined reputation for scouting guys, especially the big guys, and we've taken it on here, which leads beautifully into the next question. I'm going to bring these out of order here a little bit. When you look at offensive line recruits, which is more important, fast hands or fast feet?
Well, you've got to start with the feet. If you can't move, your hands aren't going to help you much. I think hand-eye coordination is an element that gets forgotten about. I think that is so much to do with why guys are not really great pass blockers, even though they have the feet for it. Josh Myers is obviously the guy that stands out. I mean, he just seems to not have that, he can move in front of a guy, but the guy starts doing things to try to get around him, and putting the feet with the hands and the eyes is just not there yet. Whether it ever will be, I don't know. I still believe the kid is going to be a monster guard. Speaking with a longtime coach friend who was a college offensive lineman, probably the most astute offensive mind I know, maybe the most astute coach I've known. He is just so down with the X's and O's. He thinks that Myers could come in, start off as a guard, get pass protection down, and kick outside, and that's a possibility. What I believe is that Josh Myers comes in here, and he is so dominant at guard, they're like, okay, we'll find somebody else to play tackle. We're not going to weaken one position to strengthen another. That's just one of those cardinal rules of the game of football. You don't do that. So getting back to the original question, it's feet. If you can't move, the hands don't really matter that much.
Agreed, and I'll tell you this, from having kids and having done some youth coaching, everything starts from the feet up in every sport, and the word is balance. Kids that are on balance get to use all their strength. You can learn to shoot a basketball or hit a baseball or throw a football or catch a football. A lot of it is balance, and your feet start that. So there's my, I'm off the soapbox. Okay, question, and this kind of, you set this one up too. Duane, this is from Farisje, Farisje. Obviously some foreign tone that I'm not familiar with. Duane, are you panicking over the tackle situation? Malcolm Pridgeon, the junior college transfer who was injured, hasn't played it down. Isaiah Prince struggled against good teams. Jamarco Jones in his last year. This is where we get the times. Josh Myers as a guard. Wyatt Davis as a guard until further notice. Apparently our offensive line recruiting has not been good. I did not say that. Recruiting is based on need. We have no depth at tackle. I'm panicking when you consider Jackson Carman has to A, commit, and B, start as a freshman. Things seem pretty concerning. So this poster is nervous about the offensive tackle situation. How do you assess it?
I'm not going to go as far as to say panic, but I am worried. There's no question about that. We've had the injury bug has really hurt us. Federer has never been healthy a day since he's been here. And then we lose Pridgeon. So, coming back from injury and then being game ready are two different things. So first he's got to get completely back from injured, and that's taking time. And then he's got to get game ready, and he's been away from the game for a while now. Very much a concern, Dan. Very much a concern. And then, Myers is just not looking like he's a guy that can play tackle for us. That hurts, and then we lose Moretti. I actually thought Moretti had a better chance of being a left tackle than Myers did of being a right tackle. That really hurt us. I was bothered that we lost Moretti. And the coach I was telling you about a little earlier, he really thought Moretti was outstanding. So that to me is a loss. Yeah, we got a situation here. We've got three guys that can play tackle right now, healthy bodies. And then we've got two guys that could be tackles who are, they're just not healthy yet. We don't know what we have here. I've given up on Federer ever stepping on field at Ohio State. I'm not going to be surprised if he's a medical before spring ball. We'll see about that. And then you've got Pridgeon. Having Pridgeon back could be massive for next year. It could be the most important addition to this roster next year. Yeah, I'm saying that. He's that important. So yeah, panicked? Not yet. For one thing, I'm not completely sold that Prince cannot come around. We've dismissed a kid, a guy who has just not played a lot of football recently. You got to remember, he was hurt for a good part of his senior year, and then he comes in here. He's pretty inexperienced. Let's see what happens with him. I'm not completely convinced he's not going to be at least a serviceable tackle for us. Getting Pridgeon back could be the single most important addition to the roster next year, though.
I'm with you. I do think Prince has some upside left. My hope is that they were doing this in an effort to get the beginner's unluck out of the way so they can get some valuable time out of him.
Trial by
I'm not
fire.
giving up on
Throw him in there.
Yeah, I'm not giving up.
If he can. Yeah.
It's not like they didn't have a lot of other options either. So let's see how that one works out. Obviously, he did not play at a high enough level for them to compete against the biggest and baddest, but with an off season and some more time in the weight room, I think that will help him tremendously. All right, this is a big question, so I'm going to cut it in half here in the interest of time. Who are Duane's top 5 defensive commitments of the Urban era?
Oh, man. Wow, that's a huge question. There's one name that just immediately jumps in my mind, though. Chase Young. Chase Young is a massive get. I mean, You've seen with the kid, his film just sparkles. It's just, you're looking at a guy that if he doesn't make it to the NFL, it's only because he was injured or did not work hard enough. And he just leaps out at me. Let's see. Somebody else that just, obviously, Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa is proving to be a prototypical strong side end. He was coming out of high school. I laughed at some of that they dropped him down the ranking some. I was like, have you seen the film? And physically, he is pretty much a prototype for a strong side end. Thought that about him coming out of high school, and now what he's done through college into the pro level. I mean, I go back to the Notre Dame game. What havoc he wreaked in such a short period of time in that game. He had a game's worth of plays. He was player of the game, and he only played a quarter. Just a dominant defensive lineman, and I thought so coming out of high school. You know, it isn't like he developed into that. He was just dominant going back to high school. So he would be another one. A guy who is really proven to be another one is Marshawn Lattimore. I thought he was an even better offensive football player, if you can believe that, after what you've seen him be as a college player, cornerback. I'm not surprised that Marshawn Lattimore has been as good as he's been in only 1 year. Not surprised at all. I'd have to throw him out there too. Let me think about another guy that I didn't necessarily think he would be such a great linebacker, but I remember looking at Darren Lee as a high school player, played quarterback, wide receiver, and safety, and he was just a guy I could not understand why there wasn't more fuss about. He was just such an outstanding athlete, so athletic. He just seemed to make things happen effortlessly. He would be another one. And a guy who has not really had an opportunity to show himself, Justin Hilliard. Justin Hilliard at the high school level is the best linebacker I've seen in Ohio. Better than Captain Moyer. I'm trying to remember the kid that went to Alabama.
Trey DePriest.
The Texas. Trey DePriest would be
Jordan
Hicks on my list. Jordan Hicks. No, that's right. Jordan Hicks is who I'm thinking about, Texas. He would be number 2, but Hilliard would be the best linebacker I've seen in Ohio in all the time I've been doing this. And he's just been injured and has not had the opportunity to step on a football field and show what he's capable of. Better than DePriest and better than Jordan Hicks. Yeah. Those would be the guys that, just talking off the top of my head, they would be the
right
5.
On. I'm glad you got to Hilliard because I remember you saying that about him. And it's interesting that we also talked about Lattimore, and I've said this on the Bucknuts 90 a bunch of times. If a year ago you would have told somebody that Marshawn Lattimore was going to end up being number 3 on NFL.com's NFL rankings, you'd have passed out. This was a guy who was known more for his bulky hamstrings. I mean, the idea that he'd even be able to get through a season as a starter, go look at the threads, people weren't even sure he could get through it. So that's where I'm kind of holding out hope on Hilliard, that if they can get him healthy, get him into a spot where he's comfortable, that we'll see his talent come out. We shall see. Question from Keith Go Bucks. Our second to last question here. Who will be the first true freshman to see the field this coming season?
Chase Young. Chase Young
there you have it.
Will be on the field in the Rushman package. No doubt about that. No question. I was really happy to see he's up to 251 pounds and still looks lean, and he's as quick as ever. He doesn't need to get a whole lot bigger. He needs to get stronger, obviously. But what this kid can do off the edge, he's perfection. He is, if you're building a rush end from scratch, he is going to physically look like Chase Young. And then you add Chase Young's motor. I mean, you look at his body, he's long. You want length on the edge. He's going to be hard to get your hands on him. He's so long, he's going to be able to hand fight, get through a tackle trying to get his hands on him. He's so explosive. You've got to have the first step. That's the one thing. If you're going to follow along and watch film with us on these players, when you're talking about a rushman, an edge guy, the first thing you want to look out for is off the ball, the snap. Does he explode? Is he even with the tackle on the first two steps? If he is, that's an edge guy. And that's what you see with Chase Young. He has tackles beaten on the first two steps. First step, he's into their body. Second step, he's going by them. And that is what you're looking for, and that's what you see in Chase Young. There's no doubt in my mind, we are super bad if Chase Young is not on the field as a freshman at defensive end. We are super bad.
And it's possible. It is possible, given the guys that are coming back. The defensive line is already shaping up to be, if not the best Ohio State's ever had, certainly maybe the deepest in terms of impact players and rotation. You throw in the fact that there's a chance Chase Young and Nick Bosa won't be starters for this team. And both I could see making multiple Pro Bowls in the long run. So, yeah, defensive line. Maybe we haven't not gotten the plugger up the middle, but the rest of the spots are filled in droves. All right, last question. What impact, and this is a theme here, what impact do you think no offensive coordinator Kevin Wilson will have on the offensive line?
Well, I mean, he's a line coach.
Yep.
I think that he's going to look at what he saw last year and say, okay, no, this isn't going to do. And it all starts up front. That's one of the oldest cliches in football, but it's also the truest cliche in football. It all starts up front. We have to be better up front. We have to get Billy Price to stop jumping. We have to get Isaiah Prince coached up, get him stronger, get his hand-eye. We were talking earlier about hands. His hands just, he's got to get his hands up sooner. He's got to get into that end before that end gets into him. He's not going to beat him. He's just not going to beat him if he lets him get into his body. He's going to get underneath his armpit. He's going to do a rip move, and he's by him. He's getting killed like that. He's got to get out there and get his hands up. I think Wilson, the first thing he's going to just say to Coach Day, you go ahead and you handle the quarterback. I'll get around to that first. I got to get these guys straightened around. It's just not good enough. He's going to have an impact. He's going to decide that's where I got to start getting this team, this offense back online. If you're honest about it and really look at it and say, okay, they weren't awful. Let's not go there. That's just not right. That's not true. But they were not an offensive line that Ezekiel Elliott would have been the back that he was behind. That's just the fact.
Sounds like a good place to end it. We appreciate Duane stopping by and playing hurt. We will get back to our regular rotation next week. Duane on Tuesday, Steve Wiltfong on Thursday, barring any unforeseen circumstances. And we will have a thread up the day before Duane gets on there so you guys can ask a ton of questions. We like the tradition we got going here. Have a great one, Bucknutters.